Hello, my name is Randy Ewart. This is a presentation on life skills math. Here's my background. I'll summarize for you. I uh, am trilingual. I speak math, special ed, and also special ed parent language. So I have a unique perspective from all three of those areas, and that's led to this presentation on life skills. A link to documents presented in this presentation will be posted on the video description for YouTube. So first, let me give you a big picture of how life skills fits into math education in general. This document is shared with you. It's a hyperlink document. What I'd like you to see, pay attention to in this slide and on this document for this presentation is, if my will work and it's not working, it's frozen. Here we go. There we go. There we go. There it is. So if you take a look at that row, that's a category for post-secondary education that would be independent living. The middle row here is for vocation, and then the bottom row would be for 2-year, 4-year college. So what we're looking at in this video is math for students whose post-secondary setting will be some type of independent living and perhaps some type of job. Each of these links will provide you information for that part of this sequence that takes you from current IEP through courses and study skills, and then post-secondary over here. And so you can see the progression for life skills math from the current IEP all the way through life goals. And what I'm going to do is talk to you about the type of math that would be covered in this row. So let's talk about what life skills math is. I think oftentimes life skills math and consumer math are used interchangeably. I want to break this down a little bit more, and let's take a look at more specifically what life skills is as opposed to consumer math. So consumer math would be math that consumers would use, which would indicate that the consumer is purchasing a product or paying for a service. So it would be money related. So in this circle, you can see different categories or situations where the consumer is spending money. And then on the other side over here, that would be situations that a student who will have a life independent living setting and then therefore have life skills math. This is the type of math that they may see. And notice that in the middle, there is some overlap. So life skills can, for example, focus on money, and consumer math inherently would focus on money. And then there's some that maybe borderline. So percentages, maybe a student life skills setting would work with percentages, maybe not. Same thing with an apartment. Oftentimes families are looking at a group home or assisted living or something like that, so that perhaps the student would not be facing looking for an apartment. And then you have some topics, some math topics that are not consumer based. Now they may be related some way, like a bus schedule. You pay for the bus, but reading a bus schedule is not a consumer as much as the actual money. There's not really money involved there. So that's why I differentiate it as life skills math. So that's what we'll focus on in this video is the life skills math. So first, let's talk about money. So this is the foundation for both life skills and consumer math, because obviously the money is crucial in life. And one point I want to make when students are working with money, uh, they're not going to add. So in this situation, you can see that there's actually addition going on here. That's not how we process money when we're counting up money to pay for something. We don't take a calculator out and add our quarters together and our dimes together. We skip count. And so I actually have some handouts that help with skip counting with coins. So that's a little piece of information there to keep in mind that when teachers are working on counting money, the focus should be on skip counting. Same thing with dollar bills. You count out a $10 bill and then a $5. So you'd go 10, 15, and then 16, 17, 18. Or you'd go 10, 15, 20. So you're skip counting. You're not using a calculator to add them together. And money is used in going to a store. So here it's a grocery store. And so that would also be a part of life skills math and consumer math. And involved in that is understanding a receipt, understanding that you're going to have a total of all the money that you spent. And that total is known as a subtotal. And then the students also have to process, well, what's the actual total? That would include tax if there was tax. And then there's the amount that's being paid, and then there's change. And so the students would have to understand that vocabulary, what it means. And then, of course, uh, they're going to want to make sure they're getting the correct change. Now, that's an issue that's popped up with one student that I worked with. He went to Dunkin' Donuts with a friend, both of them having a disability. Both of them are learning math in that context and learning how to go to a store. And they paid $20 and should have gotten like 10.42 back. They didn't get the $10 bill back. So apparently, or it seems like the cashier may have pocketed that. And the student didn't realize it until he got home and talked to his mom. So the point I'm making here is there's money, but there's also the setting in which the money is used. And that's a big theme that you'll see in this presentation. There's also how the money is used in this, the means of using the money. So it could be with checks. And so a student would need to know how to balance a checkbook. That would also be useful in terms of other money situations, which I'll show you later. If a student uses a credit card, there are details here the student would have to know. Same with a debit card. And the thing about a debit card is you have a hard limit there and it's not going to go over, where a credit card, there may be some forgiveness for that. And the student has to understand whatever means they're using. For example, if it's a debit card, they're going to have to compare their balance with the cost of something and understand if the cost is here, they ain't buying it. If it's down here, now they have enough money. And that's a piece of the puzzle as far as life skills. And of course, they may just be using cash money. Now, I have a parent who said that her daughter's probably going to use a credit card, and they're not going to even try to have her use cash. Now, obviously, there are some cash situations. This would be a family decision along with educators uh, to help guide the parents. Take a look at transportation. Similar to the type of money, a means of paying, there's the means of transportation. Now, for some students, they're not going to be driving. Perhaps they'll have a bus. Now, if they are getting some sort of assisted living, they may have a shuttle or a van or a bus that takes them somewhere, uh, as opposed to a public city bus. So I'm not addressing that because then they're just being picked up and dropped off. But if they're going to ride a bus, there's a lot of math mixed into here. And one of the things is how to navigate and read a schedule, and then also figuring out the time element. For example, you don't want a student to show up at 6:33 when the bus is supposed to depart by 6:33. You want them to get there early. Then you then if they need to catch a bus or at a stop that's in between two marked spots, then that becomes an issue. They have to kind of estimate the time and work from there. And also, I going back to when they arrive, a lot of times I tell them to count backwards 10 minutes. Well, if it's 6:02 that the bus is being caught and they have to count back 10 minutes, that can be difficult for them to go backwards into the previous hour. Now, if they are going to get a car, now you have interest and down payment and all that to talk about. And then you also have gas, unless you're going to get electric. But we'll just stick with gas for right now. And then, of course, you got to know, well, which button am I going to use? Am I going to use the more expensive one? And what does it mean if it's 2.59 per gallon? And so there's a lot of math mixed into there. Let's take a deeper look at grocery shopping. So there's a lot of elements there that we as adults don't think about because it's second nature for us to go in and do our shopping. There's little details that we don't think about that would be significant for the students. So what I often do when I'm working with students is I start off for grocery shopping. We just talk about the different sections of the store. Now this happens to be a Google Slides. One second. And so the students practice in isolation, not in the classroom, as opposed to being at the store. And they have to understand where each item goes. For example, they may take the Legos, and since it's a Google Slides, these images are movable, and then they would slide it over to the freezer. And then the water, they would say, okay, that's be on a shelf somewhere, or on the food section. I mean, water could be both. And cheese would be in a refrigeration area, and then whatever that is would come over here to produce. And then the other aspect of this is once you get to you have to view here and find the proper section. And once you're in the proper section, then the students, especially the ones with a visual impairment, will have trouble scanning along. And not only they scan across, they have to scan up and down. So there's a lot of elements there as well. And so that's not even money, but that is consumer, but also life skills uh, specific. Some other math situations. Uh, there's fractions and decimals that they have to, not necessarily adding fractions, but they'd have to know what does it mean to be 0.5 and what do those marks mean in inches, and then you got to understand inches or millimeters down here. Also temperature, you have math mixed in there as well. And something that could be important for this would be, okay, it's going to be raining this day. I should be wearing the appropriate clothes for that, take an umbrella. And then the other thing would be 32 degrees, understanding that that is when water freezes. And so you go, whoa, on these days, if it's raining, if we see some clouds here, then you go, okay, well, that could lead to ice. And then I have a student with a visual impairment who is at risk of tripping and falling because of not seeing curbs and things like that. And then ice is also a problem for him. So understanding temperature, that's one specific example. That's where it's crucial to understand temperature. And there's also measurement in general, understanding the different types. So you have length, which tells you it's a characteristic of an object, as opposed to distance, which is how far it is between two distinct points. It's not a single object, it's two separate points and then measuring. And so there is helping them understand the difference between distance and length can be tricky. And then there's area, understanding that concept and starting with tiles on the floor of a room is a nice way to start. And then volume and understanding that concept. And then there's the actual measurement of it. So there's the concept of what it is you're measuring, and then how do you actually measure? And so I said shopping is more than just paying money, and also it's more than just finding the items. So here's an example. I have a student that I worked with in the past. I went with her and her mom. We went shopping, and a variety of components to the shopping came up. One is navigating with the cart. So some students are going down the middle of the aisle and kind of blocking people. They leave their cart in the middle. They don't see the other people, and maybe they bump the carts. Um, there's also how do you place the stuff on the cart. So here you can see that she put everything on the top, and it's empty down here. There could be putting heavy stuff on top of bread. Then once they're standing in line, and you don't want the student standing right behind another person. You want to make sure that they have some distance apart. And then down here, you can see that there's not a whole lot of space for counting the money, especially when you get to the cashier. All you have is the little check register stand. But in the classroom setting, a lot of times they're taught to count money on a desk, and they have full use of the desk. Well, that doesn't transfer very well over to this setting. So that's something to keep in mind. So you could start with a desk, but eventually you want to make the setting as close to the real life setting as possible. And then you have the weight of items that you're going to buy. And in this scenario here, what we found when we took her shopping is there's a sale, and then you have different types of chicken to buy. Uh, and then there's also expiration dates. And finally, we had one package that looked like it had been opened a little bit, and if it's chicken, certainly don't want to mess with that. And so we had to explain that to her, and that why she wouldn't buy that piece of chicken, that package of chicken. Also, if the expiration date is getting close, it tends to be on sale. And so understanding then that you want to use that chicken sooner rather than later because of the expiration date, that becomes another additional element. And so for the shopping, what I have is a task analysis breakdown of all the steps, moving the cart and finding the items and paying and how to stand in line. This is in the folder that has been leaked. Now there's also living quarters. So you have three options basically. One option is buying a house. And if we talk about that, you have to talk like similar to buying a car. You have down payment, you have interest, you have monthly payments to talk about. If a student's going to have an apartment, you have security deposit, you have the monthly rent, you have to know how many bedrooms, you have to know how many square feet. So a lot of different math mixed in there. And then, of course, neither one of these would be pertinent if the student is going to be living in a more of like a group home setting. And finally, we talk about instruction. The idea is, as I said earlier, is to make the instructional setting as close to the real life setting as possible. So one of the challenges or one of the problems that I see is that for money, a lot of times fake money is used, fake coins, and it doesn't quite match the actual coins. And students, especially if they have a visual impairment, don't make the connection as well. I mean, students already have trouble enough trying to distinguish between a quarter and a nickel. So I use actual coins for the students, and I use actual dollar bills. That's what I recommend. There's also you can simulate a budget in shopping, and this is an excerpt from some Google slides, and what we have here is like a check register, and then we have the pay per day and pay per month, and then there's also what you see here is uh, one of many slides where the students making purchases, and that matches real life to some degree, instead of a handout with like a word problem on it. And there's also helping students understand rates and unit rates. And one of the things you can do is actually get a package. For example, here, if you have a package of paper towels, you can look at the overall price, and then you can open it up and show them how you can break it down to a unit rate. You don't have to use that language, but let's say you have 12 paper towel rolls, you could have $24. um, and then what you could do is show them that then when you pull them apart, that there's going to be $2 for each roll. And that's a way of helping them understand a unit rate without actually using the mathy vocabulary. Or you can look at if they buy 3 packages of something and then they multiply. And obviously just have them do this on the calculator. I would say instead of using an actual calculator, if they have a phone, have them start using the calculator on their phone for practice. Uh, And so now how do you make all this happen over a period of time? Because it's going to take a lot of time for many students. So I have a document here, and this shows you a progression. This student started in 6th grade. And so what we looked at here is the let's see here, we have and so we look at the progression from 6th grade all the way to the end of high school. And obviously there can be transition time as well. And so we have the math related to money here. And then the student's parents' mom said that he may want to work with cars. So we looked at a sequence of math topics that would lead towards working in auto shop. And then in turn, auto shop would prepare the student for actually a job working on cars. And then I also made a connection between the mathy stuff and the applications for working on a car. For example, in 7th grade, the student could start measurement looking at length, and then an application would be like a length of the axle. And then the next year could be focusing on area, and the next year could be volume. And volume could be like the gas tank, the volume of the gas tank. And so this is a way of doing long-term planning so that the current year can be matched up with the future. And that is an overview of life skills. You have some items that are linked in the video description. And then my email address is there as well in case you have any questions. and good luck with your students.